Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Bobby, and in delivering today's golf lesson, I'm going to start with a quote from the great Raymond Floyd, the winner of the 1976 Masters. You may remember he won wire to wire, led after all 4 rounds, which eventually led him to victory. He said in his book, titled From 60 Yards and In, once a player has a fairly repeatable golf swing, then 90% of how well they play will be determined by what they think when they swing the golf club. Now let me say that again. He set the bar awfully low there. He didn't say once you're a tour player or even once you're a single-digit handicap player that from that point forward your mental package means the most. That's not what he said. He said once you have a fairly repeatable swing, which most of us fall into that camp, then 90% of how well you play will be determined by what you think when you swing the golf club. And I think we all know that on some level. And that's why it's so infuriating when you walk off the golf course having shot 10 to 15 shots higher than you know to be your standard. Because you know in your heart of hearts you got in your own way and that you simply couldn't leave your golf swing alone long enough to settle in and play some golf. And so this video is going to be divided into 2 parts. Number 1, what is our capacity for thinking and at the same time swinging? And number 2, what should we think? If not this, then what should we think about when we're playing? So let's get into the first part. So thinking in terms of our mental capacity to both think and swing the golf club, I'm reminded of a quote by Bobby Jones, the great Bobby Jones, who won the 1930 Grand Slam. He won the U.S. Open, the British Open, the U.S. Amateur, and the British Amateur all the same year, and who was also a very cerebral man. He passed the Georgia bar after just 3 semesters of law school. He hadn't even graduated from law school and passed the Georgia bar and became an attorney. He said about his own game, he says, I found throughout my career, and he said this in this North Georgia draw, that I could play exceedingly good golf with 1 swing thought, and on rare occasions, 2 swing thoughts. But I also found out that if 3 or more thoughts were required for me to swing the golf club, then I just had to go on playing poorly until I could reduce the number to either 1 or, on rare occasions, 2. Now, that's Bobby Jones. That was his capacity. Either 1 thought or, on rare occasions, 2. What then for the rest of us who are inundated with golf instruction? I'm telling you, I believe that golf is harder today than it's ever been because of all the information out there. People are trying to think through and at the same time perform every successive movement of the golf swing. And so it's important to understand that it's not more information we need, it's more feel, which I'll get into later. But before I get into that, I just want you to imagine for a moment, and I'm going to draw a comparison right now between my hand trying to catch this ball and a golfer trying to swing a golf club. If I have 1 hand and 1 ball and the single task of catching this thing, that's no problem whatsoever. Just like Bobby Jones could play well with 1 thought, I have no problem catching this. and I'm not the most dexterous type. I could have a conversation with you about something completely unrelated and still be able to catch this ball. That's how much bandwidth it requires, not much. Now, if I had another ball, that's different. Now I've got to focus. Just like Bobby Jones says, on occasion he could play well. On occasion I could bat. Well, there we go. I missed one right away. And so while I might be successful most of the time with these 2, I can't help but recognize the possibility I might miss, which I did. I didn't fake that. I missed that thing. Now, add a 3rd. Oh my goodness. What now? I've got 2 hands and I've got 3 balls, and they're all, it's not like juggling where I can, catch them individually. They're all falling at the same time. I just don't have it. I don't have the capacity for that. Just like our brain, we have 2 hemispheres of our brain. If you have 3 tasks, that's too much. And I bet you, did you see how the clumsy and uncoordinated that look as I just tried to grab them? I bet you felt that same thing in your golf swing when you're not clumsy and uncoordinated. You just had too much on your mind, too much. You gave yourself too much to think about, more than can be handled in any one golf swing. And so that's the first thing. We've got to reduce the number of thoughts. And this is a fact that, if better understood, would greatly reduce the number of disappointments experienced by men who go home and they tell their wife in these pear-shaped tones, honey, you're not going to believe this, after their round of golf. I found the secret. And she goes, oh God, I've heard this before. I found the secret. I just have this 1 thought. And we'll talk about what that 1 thought might be. But the last 6 holes I played 1 under. I don't think I'm going to struggle with golf again because it's easy. I have this 1 thing that pulls it all together. And it's true. This 1 thing did pull it all together, and they played great golf. They could hit the ball as well as they wanted to for those final 6 holes. But it's going to wear off. It always wears off. You know this. It wears off somewhere in the middle of the next 9. And why does it? Because it was never magic to begin with. The only reason it worked is because by thinking that 1 thought, they were only thinking 1 thought. And that allowed the rest of the entire body to relax and be athletic. But what's going to happen in the middle of the next 9? They are going to introduce another thought. Why? Because somewhere along the way, this magic move is going to produce a C+ shot, which is going to freak them out. They're going to go, gosh, I know this is ironclad. You know what? I think I didn't shift my weight. Okay, back to 2 thoughts. This and this. and then another C+ shot, and then another swing thought, and then the whole thing spirals out of control, and we're back to where we were. That's why that one magic move can seem magic, but eventually the magic wears off. And so that's the first thing. We've got to limit the number of thoughts because you simply cannot think through and at the same time perform every successive movement of the swing. One thought at the most. Now, part 2 to this video. What might you think? If you're not going to get technical, if you're not going to think about positions in the swing, what might be helpful in a very generic sense? I'm going to give this to you. First of all, you need to know that the best players play mostly by feel. Now, what I mean by that is they have a feel for the swing instead of a thought for every motion in the swing. And if you don't believe that, just simply watch a first-rate player prepare to hit a 50-yard pitch shot. Maybe they're 50 yards away and they're going to hit it over a bunker. The first thing they do is they put this club in their hand and they feel it. And they're looking out there, they're applying an imaginary solution to the problem at hand. How am I going to get one close to that hole? That's the problem. What's the solution? I'm going to pop it right over that bunker and make it stop. So they'll take a practice swing and ask themselves, what did that feel like? No, that's not enough. That would end up in the bunker. I need to get over that bunker. How about, ooh, that's better. In fact, I think that was perfect. I feel like that was perfect. Feel. I feel like that was perfect. And after having arrived at the one they finally think is perfect, they try to feel that same swing as they then apply it to a golf ball. Now, they're looking for a feel and then applying that feel. So whereas the best players are playing by feel, the rest of us are playing by thoughts and trying to involve our other faculties. And let me tell you how that goes. This is the learning process as well as the playing process. It starts with the learning process. People try to learn with all their other faculties other than feel. How do I know that? Because a person gets on YouTube and they see a video, there's a thumbnail of Rory at the top of his backswing and there are red arrows going all around his waist indicating something about forward rotation. So you click on that. And the very first thing you see, you're not using your feel, you're using your sense of sight. You see a slow motion of his hip action. And you go, oh wow, this is going to be great. So you're using your sight. And then the teacher comes on and starts explaining to you what you saw. So now you're using your sense of sight and your sense of hearing, not feel. And then what's next? Well, your sense of judgment. You've got to decide whether that's good for me or not. Well, okay, I think that's good for me. So that's answered in the affirmative. Once that's answered in the affirmative, what's next? Well, now you've got to use your memory because you don't have a golf club in your hand. It's going to be 2 days before you play again. And so you got to remember what you judged to be right for you that you heard and you saw. And then what's the fifth thing? Well, now you've got to, rely on your ability to replicate that. What you remember that you judged to be right that you heard and you saw. Feel's nowhere in the picture. And so it's no wonder that so many people struggle because they're simply trying to rely on the wrong senses. We need to feel the golf club instead of think it through. Now, the question becomes then, what do you think on the golf course? Well, here's something you can do when you get out there on the golf course. You know your swing is not tuned to mechanical perfection, but somehow you got to land this plane. You got 14 holes left, and the thoughts you're thinking are not doing it for you. What do? Here's what you can do. While either someone else is playing or you're waiting for the green to clear in front, go over by yourself and put this club between your thumb and your forefinger and allow it to swing. The word is allow, not force. And if you'll just let that swing and do that a few times, there is absolutely no way you can do this without feeling the club head. If you'll pay attention to it. What's the word feel? I feel this club head. All right, because I need to rely on this. I need to rely on this feel. I'm gaining a familiarity with it right now. Now, I'm going to take it all the way to 10 and 2, or perhaps within the limits of how far I can swing it, holding on just my thumb and my forefinger. All right, once I have that feel, then I'm going to put 2 hands on there and see if I can feel the same thing. The club gradually stops. The club gradually stops. The club gradually stops. The club gradually stops. That's a swing. And if I'll do that a little bit more, then I'm going to appreciate that, oh my gosh, my body is moving in response to the club. My body is not telling the club what to do. The club's telling my body what to do. Because remember, when you were holding it with one hand, your body was not asked to really get involved. I don't have to turn my body now. But when you put 2 hands on it, you started turning your body without even thinking about turning your body. You were just interested in swinging the club and maintaining the same feel you had when there was only 1 hand on it, now that you have 2. And so the body is not the leader, the body is the follower. The feel of the swing should always be the leader. And once you have that feel, turn up the volume a little bit. Let it swing a little bit and then apply that sense to that golf ball. That will always represent your best chances to hit the ball as far as you can with the most control. And probably the farthest you can hit it, period, but certainly with the most control. Truly swinging the club, but you can't swing the club until you know what a swing is, and so you have to adopt that feel, and if you'll work through that little drill that I just took you through, you'll be amazed at how it clears the mind out and occupies the part of the brain that might otherwise be thinking multiple thoughts and fills it instead with the feeling that you're looking for. And that's a far better place to be. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you next week.